Hello everyone, thanks for having me here tonight. My name is Brandon, I work for Armory, and I'm here to talk about using Spinnaker with EKS. And before I begin, does anybody here use Spinnaker? Alright, cool, we got one person, a couple people. Anybody else that's not using it has at least heard about it? Alright, that's a fair number. Okay, and I assume most people in here know what EKS is? Amazon hosted Kubernetes. All right. So who am I? I'm a software engineer here at Armory. I love to automate as much things as I possibly can. Automating things is the way of the future, really. We should not be doing manual things anymore. It's 2018, people. We need to move on. You can follow me on GitHub. Follow me on Twitter. Follow you back. So some topics I'm going to talk about, go over what is Spinnaker, then how to install Spinnaker on EKS, and how to create a Spinnaker pipeline to deploy a Helm chart to 2 different EKS clusters. So Spinnaker helps companies achieve stage 5 here. So we separate companies by stages. Stage 1 companies, pretty much everything is a manual step. There's maybe 1 or 2 small things that are automated, but for the most part, deployments take months. The previous company I used to work at, we were stage 1. It took us, we did probably 1 deployment a month, maybe that. Some years we did maybe 5 deployments, just due to time, resources, all that kind of fun stuff. So Spinnaker helps Spinnaker helps companies go to stage 5 to where there's automated canaries, automated rollbacks, chaos engineering, there's 0 manual steps. It takes minutes to deploy, not ages, like some of us have done maybe 15, 20 years ago. Or me a few months ago. By the way, I've been working at Armory for 3 months now. So working at a company that did really very, very slow deployments to a very fast-paced world, there's a lot of learning involved. And a lot of fun. You can't if you're not having fun while you're learning, you're doing something wrong. So Spinnaker has a very large open source community. Some core contributors, Netflix, Google, Amazon, Armory, Microsoft, Oracle, Pivotal, a whole bunch of us that are contributing to the project. And these are some companies that are using Spinnaker in production. Box, Grubhub, MuleSoft, a whole bunch of them on here. And hopefully a lot more. So this is the software development lifecycle. You create tickets, you write code, you put the code into a repo, you maybe have CI, you store an artifact, and you have continuous delivery, which is where Spinnaker comes in, feature flagging, and everything. Spinnaker makes it easy to do the continuous delivery aspect. So now I'm going to talk about installing Spinnaker with Armory on EKS. You don't have to use Armory. Obviously, we would like you to. The nice thing with Armory is, though, it makes it a lot easier to actually install Spinnaker. There's an open source tool called Halyard that you can use to install Spinnaker, but reading through the documentation for it, you may not understand all of the steps that are required to set it up and use it. So what Armory does is it automates Halyard for easy configuration. It creates an S3 bucket for storage. It bootstraps a Kubernetes service account and makes it easier to begin exploring Spinnaker. So I got a little video here. Oops. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So essentially we're curling down the installer. It's going to download for us. it doesn't take that long to download. A spotty internet connection when I recorded this. I wasn't sure how it was going to be here, so I figured, be safe for the demo gods and not do all of the demo here. I do have some stuff I'm going to be demoing. So essentially this is downloading Armory's version of Halyard. So now it's going to start the Halyard daemon. This is what connects out to a Kubernetes cluster for you to start installing everything. And there's a CLI tool that we use to connect with the daemon to send off commands. So now we're going to run Hal Armory init. This is not an open source. This is what Armory has provided to make using Spinnaker easier. So it checks to see what version of kubectl. You can enter in your email address. And then we can choose our cluster that we want. We can make a new namespace in our cluster. So it also, oops. Okay, I guess I got to click. There we go. So if you have your AWS credentials locally on the computer, it can use those. If not, you can actually, it'll prompt you and say, hey, enter in your AWS key and your secret key. And then if you want to create a new bucket, or it'll automatically create one for you. So now it's going through the process of setting up the S3 account for us. Created our namespace. It's setting the Kubernetes v2 provider. There was an old v1 provider in Spinnaker that was not manifest-based. Kubernetes is entirely manifest-based, so you need some sort. This makes it a lot easier to use. So now we're configuring the S3 storage. This is where Spinnaker stores all of its pipelines. So that way you could actually bring down Spinnaker and put it back up and still have access to all of your pipelines. And then now it's waiting for all of these services to deploy. And this stage can take a little bit of time depending on network connectivity, how big your cluster is. And essentially what this will do is all these will turn green when all of the pods are up and ready to be connected. And then it'll run a command called hal deploy connect, allowing you to connect directly to your Spinnaker install. It essentially just calls kubectl to do port forwarding for you. It's just a nice way of doing it as opposed to remembering the commands off the top of your head, which I can never seem to do. So that is essentially how we set up Spinnaker. Go back here. Oh, okay, so now we're going to go into a demo. And does anybody here use Helm? Few people? Okay. Helm is a Kubernetes templating system. Allows you to easily template your manifests. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go over here. And this is Spinnaker. And let me blow this up a little bit for you guys. So we can go over here and we can check out our infrastructure. We can see all of the different pods that are associated with this Spinnaker install. These are all of the Spinnaker pods themselves, but anything else we deploy inside of this we could also see. So when we go over to pipelines, we're going to create a pipeline and it's going to have something else show up in our infrastructure tab. So let me click on pipelines. We're going to configure this. So I have some stuff already set up to make it a little bit easier. And that stuff is the expected artifacts. So I already have a Helm chart stored somewhere in S3, and I also have a dev and prod overrides for that stored in S3. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new stage to this pipeline, and we're going to bake a manifest. So let's change this to bake dev. And the name, we're going to give it dev and the namespace that we're using, EKS webinar. And then expected artifact, our Helm charts, and our overrides, we're going to give it, this is going to be our dev one. And then unfortunately we need to add an override here, image.name. And one of my awesome coworkers at Armory, his name is Ethan, he set this up. And he has a Docker image that we can use, and we're going to override that. And then we're going to call that dev, and we're going to save changes. So now we have one stage in our pipeline. Now we're going to make another stage. We're going to bake our production manifest. So we're going to bake, and we're going to call this bake prod. Name for this is prod, and the namespace that we're deploying to is demo. Again, deploy the same chart. And then let me add in the artifact of our prod values. And then we need to do the same override again. All right, let me save these changes. So the next thing that we're going to do, now we have our two manifests baked, we can actually deploy our dev manifest to our dev system. So we're going to go off of here, and we're going to add a new stage, and we're going to deploy a manifest. We're going to deploy dev. And we're also going to have this stage depend on our production bake, because if our production bake fails, there's a big problem, we need to fix that. So what we can do is we can say depends on bake prod. So now we have a nice thing to say if both dev and prod bake correctly, dev will deploy for us. So we're going to deploy to our Kubernetes account, and it's going to be an artifact that we're going to deploy, and that is our dev artifact. So save those changes. And then in Spinnaker, we have this concept of what's called a manual judgment, meaning we have a manual step in here. And sometimes manual steps are needed to do maybe some hand verification that stuff is working correctly. And for a simple demo, the manual judgment step is pretty nice. Instead of running integration tests that might take 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, depending on your setup, this allows us to be a little quicker. So we're going to add a new stage, and it's going to be a manual judgment. And we're going to name this stage, should we deploy to prod, if I can spell correctly. So we're going to save that. And then we're going to add another stage to actually deploy our production manifest to our production environment, which is running on a different EKS cluster. So deploy manifest. And we have two different accounts. We have a Kubernetes, the standard Kubernetes account, and another EKS2. I named the account. When you set up your accounts with Spinnaker, you can give them whatever name you want. Armory Spinnaker does the first account name as Kubernetes, but I think that can be changed. I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to deploy to that account, and the expected artifact is our prod manifest, or our prod Helm chart. So we can save our changes. Then now we can actually go back and let's run our pipeline and make sure that it actually is successful. Hopefully it is. Otherwise I have some explaining to do. So our bake prod was successful, our bake dev was successful, that's what the green means. And we can actually see, the artifact. Okay, I might need to make this a little smaller. There we go. So we're baking dev, and we can actually see what it's doing. So right now it's forcing a cache refresh, and once this passes, it's going to wait for the manifest to actually stabilize. And depending, that was good. So now we're on this manual judgment step. It's asking us, should we deploy to production? Is it good? Is it bad? You know what? I'm going to bite the bullet and say continue. So now that's done. It's going to deploy to production for us. And it's going to follow the same steps. It's going to deploy the manifest, monitor the deployment. And if we go to our infrastructure tab, it might take a little bit for it to show up here. let's go back here. Okay, it says that it's done. So the deploy was successful to prod. Let's see, why is it not showing up in here? Okay, it could be a caching issue. I shouldn't have messed with this before I did a demo. But normally you would see, just like where it has the cloud driver pod, you would see, oh, here we go. This is in our EKS2 environment and the deployment prod spin Helm demo. So we can actually even click on here and see more information about the replica set, the events it was successfully created, and everything. So this is using Spinnaker to deploy a Helm chart to 2 different environments. Both of them happen to be EKS, but that doesn't matter. It could be something else. It could be EC2. It could be GKE even. All right, let's see. So with that, any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
If it's like public cloud and on-prem, any special things we need to know?
Can you repeat the question?
If we deploy to AWS GCP,
Yeah.
and the other one is going to on-premise, what special thing we need to know?
So deploying to on-premise.
Yeah.
Kevin, would you be able to help with that one?
Yeah, so Kubernetes can live anywhere, like
Right.
on-prem, and Spinnaker can, as long as it has network connection to it, it can deploy the same thing. Spinnaker itself can also live on-prem on some little air-gapped environment if needed, and it really doesn't need any network connection in or out besides talking to your infrastructure.
So mainly I make sure the Spinnaker can talk to my master API,
Exactly.
Kubernetes API on-prem, then they will talk the same way and then take care of it.
Yeah, so what you do is you give Spinnaker the kube config, and then it will just take it from there as long as you got your networking set up.
Thank you, Kevin.
Deployment strategy. Anything particular in your version of Spinnaker against the one open source in terms of deployment strategy?
They do the same exact thing. We don't add anything with deployment strategies to make it different. The Spinnaker open source community is really awesome. There's a lot of people from Google and Netflix that pay attention to the Spinnaker Slack channel, and if there's something that you're interested in, you can always go to their Slack channel, go to the Spinnaker Slack channel, and ask them about it. Yeah. Any other questions?
Last one.
Huh?
Last one.
All right. Okay. Cool. Thank you guys.